Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakaacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Goshyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mayi Ki Jai Yamuna Mayi Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 4, Text number 30. Yasmin yato yena cha yasya yasmai yad yo yatha kurute karyate cha paravaresham paramam prak prasiddham tad brahma tad dhetur ananyad ekam yasmin yato yena cha yasya yasmai yadyo yatha kurute karyate cha paravaresham paramam prak prasiddham tad brahma datte turanandyadekam yasmin yato yena cha yasya yasmai yadyo yatha kurute karyate cha paravaresham paramam prak prasiddham tad brahma tadheturanandyadekam yasmin yato yena cha yasya yasmai yadyo yatha kurite karyate cha paravaresham paramam prak prasiddham tad brahma tadheturanandyadekam yasmin yato yena cha yasya yasmai yatha kurute karyate cha prak prasiddham tad brahma tadheturanandyadekam. Stevie? Yasmin yato yena cha yasya yasmai yadyo yatha kurute karyate cha paravaresham paramam prak prasiddham dheturanandyadekam yasmin yato yena cha yasya yasmai yadyo yatha kurute karyate cha paravaresham paramam prak prasiddham Tad Brahma Tad Theturanandyadekam. Anybody else? Mukunda? Anybody online? Okay. Yasmin, in whom? The Supreme Personality of Godhead or the Supreme Place of Repose? Yataha, from whom everything emanates. Yena, by whom everything is enacted. Cha, also. Yasya, to whom everything belongs. Yasmai, to whom everything is offered. Yat, which. Yaha, who. Yata, as. Kurute, executes. Karyate, is performed. Cha, also. Para avaresham, of both in the material and spiritual existence. Paramam, the supreme. Prak, the origin. Prasiddham, well known to everyone. Tat, that. Brahma, the supreme Brahman. Tat hetuhu, the cause of all causes. Ananyat, having no other cause. Ekam, one without a second. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation: the Supreme Brahman, Krishna, is the ultimate resting place and source of everything. Everything is done by Him. Everything belongs to Him, and everything is offered to Him. He is the ultimate objective, and whether acting or causing others to act, He is the ultimate doer. There are many causes, high and low, but since He is the cause of all causes, He is well known as the Supreme Brahman, who existed before all activities. He is one without a second and has no other cause. I therefore offer my respects unto Him. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original cause, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavaha. Even this material world, which is conducted under the modes of material nature, is caused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who therefore also has an intimate relationship with the material world. If the material world were not a part of His body, the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Cause, would be incomplete. Therefore we hear, Vasudeva Sarvam Iti Samahatma Sudurlabha. If one knows that Vasudeva is the original cause of all causes, he becomes a perfect Mahatma. The Brahma Samhita declares, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme controller. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, for He is the prime cause of all causes. The Supreme Brahman, Tad Brahma, is the cause of all causes, but He has no cause. Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Govinda, Krishna, is the cause of all causes, but He has no cause for His appearance as Govinda. Govinda expands in multifarious forms, but nevertheless they are one. As confirmed by Madhvacharya, Ananya Sadrisha Bhavad Ekorupadya Bhetaha Abedataha. Krishna has no cause nor any equal, and He is one because His various forms as Svamsha and Vibhinamsha are non-different from Himself. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Shreshtam Manamapi Shachi Putramatra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupurim Mathurim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Rakhunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Varijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are continuing the Hamsaguya prayers, which Prajapati Daksha is reciting. So there's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam which goes, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahangara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. So this verse is this verse in the Bhagavad Gita is talking about the jiva, and the jiva in relation, the jiva's influence in relation to Krishna's influence. Similar to kind of what this verse is talking about. Krishna, or Daksha, in this prayer is stating that everything is done by Krishna. He's the ultimate doer. There are many causes, high and low, but since he's the cause of all causes, he's well known as the Supreme Brahman who existed before all activities. So in this verse in Bhagavad Gita, it's describing how Krishna, indirectly, through the material nature, is actually, he's doing all things. But the living entities, being bewildered by ahankar, they think that they're the doer, when in reality they're not. So the jiva is very infinitesimal. The spirit soul is infinitesimal, both in size and literally it's very small, 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair. And also the jiva's influence. It's also very small, very infinitesimal. So the jiva's influence doesn't extend very far past the body. And actually even within the body, the jiva doesn't have full autonomy, full control, although it powers the whole thing. So the jiva, the only thing the jiva can do really is desire. We desire, the jiva desires. Yeah. Sorry. Jiva, yeah. Jiva means spirit soul. Jiva means the spark of Krishna's energy, which is who we are. So we are not the body. The body is a vehicle for the jiva, the soul. And so when I use this word jiva, basically jiva is synonymous with the soul. So the only thing that the jiva can do, the only thing that the soul can do really is desire. The soul can desire to, for example, move its arm, the arm in which of the body in which the soul is inhabiting. So the jiva can desire, but if the devas aren't there, if the demigods aren't there, which control the particular parts of the body, which are in charge of the different parts of the body, then the arm won't move. So similarly, the jiva can desire, anyway, so many things the jiva can desire, but without the material nature there to fulfill that desire, nothing happens. So the jiva, their influence is very infinitesimal. It's only, they can only desire, and then the material nature fulfills that desire. So due to the desire to enjoy the material nature, due to the desire to lord it over, as Srila Prabhupada says, or to conquer the material nature. The jiva comes to this material world. Originally, the jiva is spiritual. It's fully spiritual. Najayate mriyate va kadachan nayam bhutva bhavadavanam bhuyaha ajo nitya shashvato yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. The soul, for the soul there's never birth nor death, nor does he ever cease to be, nor does he ever come into being. He is unborn, ever existing, undying, primeval. And when the body is slain, the soul remains, the soul goes on. So, the soul is completely spiritual by nature, Satchit Ananda. And so it has nothing really to do with the material nature originally. But because the soul at one point had some desire to enjoy, because we had some desire to enjoy, like Krishna does, the Supreme Soul, who's the center of everything, the jiva comes to this material world. Krishna makes this material world so that the jivas can come here and try to fulfill their desires. And so when the jiva comes in contact with the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, it becomes covered. Purushav prakriti stohi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam gunasangosya sadasad yoni janmasu. The Purusha, the soul, prakriti stohi, the soul residing in the material nature, becomes covered. Bhunkte prakriti jan gunan, becomes covered due to trying to enjoy that which is born of the material nature. Karanam gunasangosya sadasad yoni janmasu. And therefore, he has to travel through different bodies throughout the material world. In sometimes higher, sometimes lower species, animals, humans, devas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has a song in which he's expanding on the philosophical treatise, I guess you could say, of Srivas Thakur's son after he was revived by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so in this verse, in the song, one of the verses is Deva Danava Manava Pashu Patanga Kita Hoye Sharge Naroke Bhutale Firi Onitya Asha Loya, that due to my desire, my asha for that which is anitya, non-eternal, then I've been traveling up and down the different species of life. Sometimes I'm a demigod, sometimes I'm a bug, sometimes I'm an animal, sometimes I'm a human, sometimes I go up to heaven, sometimes I go to hell, so the soul is traveling, being taken, basically dragged. Loye means, antyasha loye means literally, these desires, they're taking me, they're dragging me. All throughout the material world. And so when the jiva is in these different bodies, when the jiva is associating with the modes of material nature in these different bodies, the jiva develops something called ahankara. And ahankara is basically the interface between the soul and the material world. It's that thing by which the soul enjoys the material world. Aham, the word ahankar literally means I making, like I'm making eyes, making new eyes. It's aham means I, and kara means making or doing. So according to how one enjoys this material world, how one is relating to this material, one develops ahankar. So for example, somebody is thinking, I'm a father because they're enjoying their children and their family. Or somebody's thinking that I'm a husband because they're enjoying their wife. Or somebody's thinking I'm a, king because they're enjoying kingly opulence. So according to the way one enjoys the material world, one develops a particular ahankar, a particular false ego is kind of the English word that's, it's a rough translation, but it's a false ego. And so this ahankar causes forgetfulness of reality. Just like if you're watching a movie, not that devotees watch movies, but if you happen to be watching a movie, or let's say you're watching Following Srila Prabhupada. If you're watching Following Srila Prabhupada and you're really absorbed, you're really absorbed in watching Following Srila Prabhupada. And which is for those who don't know, which is a series of basically movies, which are, it's compilations of tapes of our guru, Srila Prabhupada, in different places, and then devotees, his disciples, give commentary on what was happening at that particular time. So, following Srila Prabhupada. So, if one is watching, following Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada is in, Paris, and I think Prabhupada went to Paris in 1974, but Prabhupada's in Paris, and you're really absorbed in watching it, you forget, basically, you forget that you're not in Paris in 1974 with Srila Prabhupada, or if you're watching some mundane movie, people get so absorbed in these mundane movies that you develop like a whole thing. You develop like you get in, like if you're watching a Western movie, or if you're watching like a fantasy movie, you forget that you're not in Lord of the Rings. You become really invested, and you're thinking along those lines. So similarly, this ahankar causes a disconnect from reality. Because one's thinking, I'm a father, I'm the protector of my family, you forget that you actually have no control over your family. You forget that all these things are actually not in your control. You forget, the jiva forgets that he's infinitesimal in size and influence. So it develops this Ishvara bhav, Ishvaro hamaham bhogi, that I'm the controller and I'm the enjoyer. And everybody, practically speaking, to one extent or another, is thinking like this, that I'm the controller of my circumstance, and I'm the enjoyer of those things which come to me in the material world. But it's a mistake. It's just a miscalculation. Because the real controller is Krishna. Krishna created everything. Ishvara Parama Krishna. Ishvara means controller, Parama means the topmost, and then Krishna. So Krishna is the topmost controller. Why? Because Krishna created everything. Just like if I'm a watchmaker, let's say I made this watch. I know the ins and outs of this watch. I procured the parts. I put them all together. I know what's going on. If something goes wrong, I can fix it, or I can make something go wrong if I want, and I can tweak it any way I want. But if I didn't make the watch, and if I have no idea how watches work, then how can I do any of that? Of course, it's pretty easy. In terms of breaking, it's pretty easy. You can break a watch pretty easily. But fixing and tweaking and all these different things, it requires expertise. And the expertise comes from the person who created it. Janmadhyasya yataha. Krishna is he who created everything, he who destroys everything, and he who maintains everything in between. So unless one acknowledges this, unless the soul acknowledges that actually, yes, Krishna is the supreme controller, Krishna does everything, I'm not the doer, then there's no question of peace, there's no question of happiness, and really there's no question of anything. There's no question of getting anything done. You just kind of flop around in the material world for some time. It's like, for example, you want to become a marine biologist. So you go to college, you get a degree in marine biology, and then you say, okay, I'm going to get a job at the accounting firm so I can apply my degree in marine biology. Well, okay, you get the job at the accounting firm, but what do you actually get done? You get nothing done. You don't get accounting done because you're not trained as an accountant, and you also don't get any marine biology done because what's the scope for engaging in marine biology at an accounting firm? And Krishna comments on this in Bhagavad Gita. It says, "Nasukam na param gatim," that you neither get happiness nor do you achieve the ultimate goal. So if one wants to achieve anything in this material, if one wants to achieve anything substantial, meaning having some kind of realization of what this world is for, who Krishna is, who I am, then one has to live and acknowledge why Krishna created this material world. Because Krishna created this material world with a purpose. It's not that Krishna just, did it for no reason. Just like, for example, this watch, again, going back to the example of the watch, This watch has structure. This watch has, it tells time. There's a specific purpose that it was created for. This watch wasn't just created for no reason. And so Krishna creates this material world because he wants to bring the fallen souls back to him. He wants to bring the fallen conditioned souls back to the shelter of his lotus feet. But unless we understand, first of all, who we are, who Krishna is, what's the nature of this material world, the difference between matter and spirit, we won't understand that. We won't be able to fulfill that purpose of going back to Krishna. And the only way that we can really realize this is if there's some desire. There has to be some desire, some motivation on the part of the living entity to inquire. This human form of life is distinct from the animal forms by intelligence, sumedhasaha, by good intelligence. Because in animal life, no animal can inquire, why am I here? Who am I? What is the nature of this material world? What is the nature of God? The animals, they just don't have the intelligence to inquire like this. But in the human form of life, Krishna gives this intelligence to give the living entities this one chance. There's 8.4 million different species of life, and Krishna, in this human form of life, is giving the living entity this chance, this window where he can inquire. Therefore, Vedanta Sutra says, the first sutra, I'm forgetting. Atato Brahma Jigyasa, right. I forgot the Atato part, Brahma Jigyasa. But Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Atato means therefore. Therefore, having achieved the human form of life, Brahma Jigyasa, inquire into Brahman. Inquire into that, into something spiritual. Don't waste this human form of life. Nayam deho deha bhajam narloke kashtan kamana hatevid pujami. Tapo divyam putrakayena satam shuddhye dyasmad brahma sokyam tvanantam. Don't waste this human form of life. Rishabhadev says, don't waste this human form of life enjoying like a hog or a dog who eats stool. Practically speaking, the material enjoyment that one experiences in the human form of life, and in whatever it is, in sex life or in romance, or in art or philosophy or all these different things, practically speaking, it's no different than a hog, on the side of the street. I saw when we were in Vrindavan just recently. There was, we were walking toward Radharaman Mandir, and there was a hog, in Loy Bazaar you have these alleyways, and on the sides there's these gutters where it's basically just sewage, and there was a hog, and there was this part where it was like stagnant, and it was just a bunch of nasty stuff there, food and rotting food and definitely sewage, and this hog, he went and he stuck his nose, right. It was there was like a little hole. It was like going into like a pipe or something like that. And this hog, he stuck his nose right in there. And he's slopping it up. So, material enjoyment in the human form of life, or enjoyment as a hog slopping up sewage and wherever. It's hog heaven, yeah. It's actually no different. It's just one is polished and one is unpolished. But they're practically the same. It's the same thing going on in the mind. That I'm the controller and the enjoyer in the material world, and everything in this material world is for my enjoyment. So one has to get over this. One has to get over this ahankar. One has to get over this idea that I'm the controller and that I'm the enjoyer, and that everything in this world is meant for my happiness. One has to acknowledge that actually I'm not the center. One has to acknowledge that actually I'm very small. But unless we really want to, unless we have some kind of course Krishna's mercy is there too, and Krishna's devotees. But even if Krishna's devotees come to us, we see so many books go out, so many books are distributed to people. And even they take the book, they give a donation. But unless they have some desire to inquire into the absolute truth, they won't. They just won't. Krishna can't make us. Krishna can't make us go back home back to Godhead. Not even the devotees can make us go back home back to Godhead. You can force somebody. You could grab somebody and forcibly shave their head, put them in a dhoti, shove a bead bag onto their hands and make them chant. But what will be the effect? Nothing. If they don't really want to, if their heart's not in it, they don't want to. So Maya is very strong. Devi Hesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratiya. It's Krishna's energy. We're up against Krishna, practically speaking. So Maya is very strong. And Maya means seeing anything as separate from Krishna. This verse is saying how, where is it? Yeah, this material world, Krishna has an intimate relationship with this material world because it's part of his body. It's him. It's his energy. The Bahiranga Shakti, the external energy. So if one wants to see everything as related to Krishna, if one wants to get over Maya, which means seeing anything as separate from Krishna, it's a question of love. Just like if you have a woman and a man, they love each other. They fall in love. There's so many songs and books and all these things about this, like new love. That's like the topmost, the nectar which all the materialists are anxious for, is new love. When you just meet somebody and it's all fresh and it's all new, and the boy, he becomes totally bewildered, and he sees everything in relation to this girl. He sees a pretty flower and he sees, oh, she would love that, or he sees something in the news, and he says, oh, I wonder what she would think about that. Or he hears a song, a love song, and it reminds him. Everything reminds this boy of this girl. So it's a question of love. It's a question of love. If we want to see everything in relation to Krishna, we have to love Krishna. If there's no love there, if there's no attachment, then, it's just some kind of sentiment, like some kind of like Hindu thing. Like so many Hindus, they say, I love Krishna. And not to, of course Hindus are very, very pious, much better than, most people. But we see, so many people, they say, the Hindus, they say, I love Krishna. So I've heard it so many times. But Jayapataka Maharaj, I think it was Jayapataka Maharaj, he was commenting that in Kolkata one time he saw a shop called Krishna Beedis. So they were selling beedis, but which is like a little cigarette, very strong tobacco, little kind of Indian cigarette, very popular in India. But Krishna Beedis. What does Krishna have to do with beedis? Nothing. It just takes away your consciousness, ruins your health, and takes you away from Krishna.
I went there. I thought it was
strong. So it's not sentiment. It's love is not a cheap thing. Love means anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadinavratam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhakti uttama. That if one loves Krishna, anyabhilashita shunyam, he has no other desires, no tinge of any other desires, not even a little bit. And he sees everything in relation to Krishna, and he engages in those activities which are favorable for Krishna's pleasure. Not that I engage in activities to please Krishna, but also to please me, but I'm only engaging in activities to please Krishna. And so the prime example of this is the residents of Vrindavan, the Vrajvasis. Krishna was their whole life. Krishna was their entire life. They knew nothing else but Krishna, or I should say they know nothing else but Krishna. Krishna was everything. Krishna was like their life air. Excuse me. It's described that when Krishna left Vrindavan to go to Dwarka, of course Krishna never leaves Vrindavan, but externally, for the sake of Lila, Akrura took him to Mathura. After this, all the residents of Vrindavan were practically dead. They were just like, kind of just like walking like zombies, practically speaking. Because Krishna was their life. And similarly, when Krishna was chastising Kaliya, Krishna was taken underwater. This giant serpent took Krishna underwater. And for 2 hours they were fighting underwater. And at that time, the residents of Vrindavan, they appeared as if they were dead. Some of them actually, like they practically weren't breathing. They were just unconscious completely. They just couldn't handle it. Krishna was their whole life, is their whole life. And similarly, the pure devotees of Krishna, even in this world, like, for example, Madhavendra Puri, whenever he would see a dark cloud, Krishna's complexion, it's described like a dark cloud. Very beautiful color, shyam. And so when Madhavendra Puri would see a dark rain cloud, he would go unconscious because it would remind him of Krishna. He would be so ecstatic just to see, this color which resembles Krishna. He would be so ecstatic he would go unconscious. And so this process of Krishna consciousness, the process of chanting Hare Krishna, the process of engaging in devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting and remembering Krishna, the process of Krishna consciousness is meant to revive this love, which is actually already there in our hearts. Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya, sadhya sa sadhanabhida, nitya siddhasya bhavasya, prakatyam hridi sadhyata. That the process of sadhana bhakti, or the process of devotional service in the stage of trying to achieve perfection, means engaging the senses in serving Krishna. And by this, nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakatyam hridi sadhyata. By engaging in this process, then this nitya siddha bhav, this love or this feeling which is always there, which is nitya siddha, eternally there, situated within our heart, it becomes prakatya, it becomes manifest. So when one engages in Krishna consciousness favorably for Krishna's pleasure, which means sacrificing, which means working hard, which means, of course, within reason, but which means, going out of our way to do something for Krishna, to make Krishna happy, to make Krishna smile, to make Prabhupada smile, to make the spiritual master happy. It's not a cheap thing. And it requires a lot of dedication, and it requires a lot of hard work. Like Srila Prabhupada said, an easygoing life and Krishna consciousness do not mix very well. So, if one wants to make Krishna happy, if one wants to make Krishna smile, then one has to work very hard. One has to go very far out of the way and sacrifice their intelligence, sacrifice their time, sacrifice their energy, sacrifice things that they may want to do, sacrifice, their attachments, certain relationships, certain activities, so many things. There has to be some kind of sacrifice. And when one engages this world, the things of this world in Krishna's service, when one sacrifices all of these different things in Krishna's service, then even in this life, the miseries of material nature can't touch them. Ihayasya harer dasya karmana manasagira. What's the third line? Nikilashvapyavastasu jivan muktasa uchyate. So even in this life, if one is engaging in Krishna consciousness, if one becomes Hari Das, if one becomes a servant of Krishna, then in whatever situation one is in, one is liberated, jivan mukta, even in this life. But it requires dhrida vrata. It requires tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yena mam upayantite. One has to make a really strong vow, a very strong determination to serve Krishna. And it requires faith. It requires faith that actually Krishna's there and Krishna's seeing what I'm doing. And if I follow the instructions of the spiritual master and I follow the instructions of senior devotees and all of this, then and the injunctions of Shastra and Sadhu, then one will 100% attain Krishna Prema and go back home, back to Godhead at the end of this life. Guaranteed. But one has to have faith because it's difficult sometimes to understand, certain principles, instructions from the spiritual master. One might think that I have a very good way of doing this, or of engaging in Krishna consciousness. One might think that I know what I want, and one might think that the spiritual master, may give an instruction, and you just can't understand, why, or you can't see how it all fits in, how it all would work. But if one has faith, if one has strong faith, and just simply follows the instructions of the spiritual master, of course not blindly, within reason, then one will attain Krishna Prema, one will please Krishna. One will go back home, back to Godhead at the end of this life, and see everything in relation to Krishna, even in this material world. So it's a matter of love. Love is not cheap. Love requires sacrifice. Love requires dedication. Love requires faith and trust and determination. But when one puts their trust and their faith in Krishna, what can go wrong? Just like what can go wrong? Just logically speaking, you don't even need an example. Krishna is in control of everything. Krishna is all good. Krishna knows your mind. Krishna knows your situation. Krishna knows everything that you need to advance in devotional service. Why wouldn't we surrender to Him? Why would we surrender to our own mind? Why would we surrender to what we think is best? Because what we think is best is always changing. But what Krishna says in Shastra, and what the spiritual master is speaking according to Krishna, according to the words of Shastra, of Scripture, it's always good. It's like the Srimad Bhagavatam. Dharma projata kaita votra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vasavamatra vastu shivadam tapatrayon mulanam. That this Srimad Bhagavatam, it casts out all kinds of materialistic dharma, materialistic religion. Means religion performed for some kind of material benefit. And it's written specifically for the purpose, it's spoken specifically for the purpose of uprooting, which means not just stopping for some time, but taking care of the root. Like when you pull a weed, if you just rip it out, if you just rip it where the ground starts, the root is still there and it'll just grow back. But the Srimad Bhagavatam, it uproots, it takes out the roots of material suffering, which is aham mameti, this idea that I'm the controller and I'm the enjoyer. This investment in I and mine. So if we can become less invested in I and mine and more invested in Krishna, and more invested in the words of the spiritual master, more invested in the words of Shastra, of Scripture, then material miseries can't touch us. And beyond just material miseries not touching us, we'll attain the supreme goal of love of Krishna and be reinstated in our position in the spiritual world with Krishna eternally. So we should have this faith, we should have this determination. So I'll stop there, and I guess we can have questions. It's a little late, sorry. Any questions or comments in-house?
You mentioned Ankar, you said?
Yeah.
Hello. You mentioned being a husband, and also being maybe a father, also being a king or something.
Yeah.
Can being a monk or devotee also be a hamkar?
Yes and no. Being a monk, being a monk can be an ahankar. You can think that I'm a monk, and this is my name, this is me, this is, it is another type of ahankar. But because we have ahankar, because we're working within the material nature, because we're still materially contaminated, we accept a material situation or an ahankar which is more favorable for executing the process of Krishna consciousness. So for example, if one thinks that I'm very rich, I'm very powerful, that's not so favorable for executing Krishna consciousness. But if one accepts the role of a monk and says, I am a servant of, I'm a servant of this ashram, and I'm a servant of Of course, being a servant of Krishna is not ahankar. That's real ego. That's the real thing, is that we're actually servants of Krishna. The soul. There's false ego and then there's real ego. And so real ego is I'm a servant of Krishna. And that's not false, actually, because we are. That's the natural state of the soul. But false ego is to say that I'm a monk, which implies that I'm eternally a monk. This is me. This is who I am. But yeah, it's true. It's a false ego, so to speak, in the sense that I'm not a monk eternally. I'm a monk in this life because it's a favorable situation for executing Krishna consciousness. But at the end of this life, I have to give up my attachment to being a monk. If I'm attached to being a monk, and at the time of death I'm thinking, oh, I want to be a monk, you know? I don't want to necessarily be a servant of Krishna, I want to be a monk. Then we'll just be a monk in our next life too, which is fine, is a good thing. But we should be more absorbed in thinking I'm a servant of Krishna rather than being a monk or something else, or same thing for like a householder, you know, somebody who has a wife and children. Shouldn't be absorbed in thinking that I'm a householder or so many things.
Thank you.
Should simply think I'm a servant of Krishna. Anything else? Online?
Yes, Hare Krishna. I have a question.
Okay.
Amogha Prabhu, thank you very much. You're very kind on the Bhat pronouns. Prabhu, the quote from the purport to the text you chose for today, text 30, is, quote, if one knows that Vasudeva is the original cause of all causes, he becomes a perfect Mahatma, end quote. So, based on this quote, my question is, apart from knowing that Vasudeva is the original cause of all causes, can you give us any other symptom related to who a perfect Mahatma is?
Well, a perfect Mahatma is one who has no material desires, like this verse I quoted, Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadinavratam anukulyena krishnanu shilana bhaktiruttama. A Mahatma is one who has no other desire but to please Krishna, and one who is free from mental speculation, means they follow an authorized process according to Guru, according to saintly people, according to the injunctions in Scripture. Free from the desire of obtaining some fruit, obtaining some result from their spiritual practices, meaning some material result, and who only engages in those activities which are favorable for Krishna's pleasure. So that is a Mahatma. That is somebody. That is a saintly person.
Yes, Prabhu. And if I may, what about the willing for engaging everyone in devotional service? That is also a symptom?
That is also a symptom.
Oh, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I was just thinking in the verse. I don't know if you have anything on the top of your head for this one, but in the verse, a lot of the things I see how it makes sense. How just how in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna saying that those who worship the devas, they're worshiping me, essentially, but they do so in the wrong way, because even if whatever they're praying for, whatever they're asking for, well, that's given by the devas, but the devas get their potency and everything from Krishna. So in essence, it's all coming from Krishna. So, and in a similar way, I move my arm, you could say, well, there's a deva in charge of movements, the air, the body, all these different things. Yeah. But behind those devas, their potency is Krishna. So you can say, okay, well, Krishna is allowing me to move my arm and so on. And therefore, Krishna is the cause of everything. But in the verse, one thing in the verse was that everything's offered to him. So that part I was thinking about how would we, what would be the perspective?
Well, I guess
make that clear.
There's one. I mean, I guess off the top of my head, there's two ways of looking at it. One thing is that if you're offering to the devas, the devas offer everything to Krishna because they're devotees. You know, that's one way to look at it. Also, if you're offering something to, some material, what would you say? To something material, it's Krishna's energy. So in that sense, you're also kind of offering it to him. It's indirect.
Right.
Just like in the first verse of the Bhagavatam, Janmadhyasya tonvayadi taratasharteshva bhignaswarat. Krishna is both directly and indirectly in charge of the material nature and present within the material nature. So those are the two ways that off the top of my head I can think about looking at it.
Yeah, that's all I could. I mean, I was, because also in the end of the purport, the Madhvacharya quote that everything is Krishna in one sense, because the Svamsa and Vibhinamsa are both Krishna, and therefore even so thinking in that, with that in mind, it could be that even if I offer something to my mother or something, well, my mother is part of Krishna, and even though say I'm offering it to the body of a person, I have that kind of concept. I see people as bodies, so I'm offering to the body. Well, the body is Krishna's energy, so But would you add anything, Balaram, to that, or anyone else?
Maybe can you rephrase the?
Just that I can see how Krishna says that everything that's given to the living entity by the devas is actually given by me. That makes sense. And the other parts of the verse, being the cause of all causes, that's pretty clear to understand. How everything actually belongs to him ultimately. Everything is actually done by Krishna ultimately, the source of everything, and so on. Ultimately, he's the doer because he's the one who does something that does something, and so on. And gives facility for other living entities to do something. That all makes sense, but the one that ultimately everything is offered to me, Krishna's saying. Or here Daksha's, reciting these other prayers, whomever they came from, that everything is ultimately offered to you. Then I was wondering, is that because, exactly why? And he was saying, well, because in one sense, if you're offering them to the devas are devotees and they offer it to Krishna. And then the other aspect, which is maybe a little more shaky, but is that, well, even if you're offering it to you're doing everything and offering it to your daughter or something like that, well, your daughter is part and parcel of Krishna, your daughter's body is part of Krishna's energy, so, and then that's why the Madhvacharya quote that everything is Krishna because both Svamsa and Vibhinamsa are both parts of Krishna in one sense. You're not different from Krishna, therefore everything you're interacting with is Krishna, which isn't usually our emphasis, but would you add any other reason why?
Yeah, like you have the Uttama Adhikari, they're saying that everyone is serving Krishna. So how without, of course it's difficult to understand that, but that's what they're saying. They're saying that everybody's serving Krishna. So you say, well, how is everybody serving Krishna? It's like, or you have in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, they say somebody, at a certain level of Krishna consciousness, they see all moving and non-moving things are, they don't see they just see Krishna, right? So, Maharaj Prabhupada would say, you see a tree, and you don't see just, this is just a tree, but you see this is, the energy of Krishna, it's coming from Krishna. Probably give an example like the mother sees a shoe. They just see a shoe. They see their son. So it's like this heavy, intense state of always remembering Krishna, just like Madhavanjapur with the cloud. So, but yeah, if we say that, there's the verse in the Bhagavatam. What is it?
You said you're proud?
No, I said there's a verse in the Bhagavatam. What is it that the universe is? It's Bhagavan, something like that. Anyways, we have to look it up. But if everything's coming from Krishna, then we say, okay, well, how is everything being offered to Krishna? Right? That's the. Because we see that it doesn't look like things are being offered to Krishna, right? So yeah, I'm not sure what to say about that.
in the case of the Uttama Adhikari saying everyone's serving Krishna, it seems like part of it is that because, well, there's this whole material facility which Krishna wants to be there to facilitate, jivas and their free will and so on, and therefore then, you could say that a person who's facilitating this material world, acting as other people's karma and so on, and even, someone who's like a pretty vicious person in this world, in one sense, is only plugged into the material world and the laws of the material world which Krishna set up, and so he or she is like a player in that, so in that sense, it's serving the system Krishna set up to help living entities, in that sense. But I remember one devotee was saying he was in college, and there's one like really nasty, like this very kind of petty and kind of one atheistic person in his classes. And this devotee was saying, I was kind of looking at him and thinking, wow, this is like glorification of Krishna. That Krishna, this is like the facility Krishna sets up, and this is kind of like actually it's beautiful in a way. He was saying because it shows how the jiva has free will. Somewhat related. Anyway,
but doesn't the Uttama Adhikari, doesn't he also feel that everyone is deep down inside a devotee as well? Yeah. And thereby serving? Yeah.
I was saying service to Krishna. I also have an idea that instead of saying that, in my mind it was meant being that you were an avatar of Krishna, actually. Instead of like, inside yourself, you sometimes feel like you're separate from the whole thing, like a black hole that has no substance at all, and you're worshiping something that is everything or something, but you're actually like an avatar of Krishna, which is also in service to Krishna, because none are one and the same that compassion comes from. But another metaphor is like for like drops of water in the ocean. Drops of water in the ocean, and that's true for everything. Anyway.
These are common ideas. They aren't exactly compatible with Vaishnav tradition, but and we could get into more deeply why they aren't these ideas like that the nature of the soul and God being like drops in an ocean. Why that's not compatible with like the like Krishna's conception or teachings of.
But there is
that relationship.
Simultaneously one yet different.
But that would take a lot. That would probably take a different class. So I guess we could discuss it some at breakfast also. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Very quickly, because oh my God, Balaram Prabhu mentioned how is it possible that everything is being offered to Krishna when everything is emanating from Krishna. And my observation is that everything should be offered to the one from whom everything is emanating, because in the ultimate sense, everything belongs to him. That is my answer to the question of Balaram Prabhu.
Jai, thank you.
Okay, you have minute independence and free will, and you can choose to do it, not to do it, but the intelligent ones, they recognize that because everything is emanating from him, everything belongs to him and should be offered to him by the second.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Stevie had something.
Steve.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Sorry, I know time-wise.
No, it's okay.
Thank you so much for the class. And so listening to commentary on this and sitting with it, I was thinking, yes, I guess we're serving, but isn't it my intention? It's the intention behind it. Like how I'm acting or how I'm doing this. I mean, yeah, I can give $1 million to the temple, but if my intention to get it and acquire it was negative and bad, I mean, that has to be on a lower way of serving Krishna than if I worked hard, did it respectfully with Krishna always in mind, how I'm getting this, the material goods, whatever, right? Instead of, so I was thinking it's the same as like when you mentioned love, we usually use that term loosely, love. It's like so generic. It's like the intention behind the love, like for my wife, for my daughter, ultimately. Even that is like such a selfish love. I've come to realize more and more as I listen to devotees and spend time than like that love that Krishna shows us, the love that Prabhupada showed us, right? That's like, it never ends. It's like constantly giving.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I feel my intentions, till I understood, is like, I'm on the opposite. I'm just taking,
Yeah.
consuming, so I don't know. I was just thinking with that is like, yes, it's all Krishna and we're giving, but it's my intentions behind that. Are they self-serving, which then we can get, then you're serving Krishna, or is it just completely selfish out of ignorance?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really both, because one can say, okay, I want to please Krishna, and they may have some intention to please Krishna, and they have $1 million, but then I want to please Krishna, so they give $5. On the one hand, there's bhavagrahi janardana, which means Krishna, he takes the bhav, he takes the feeling of the devotion with which actions are performed, offerings are performed. But at the same time, although we may have an intention to please Krishna, but if we're not doing anything practical, if we're holding back, then Krishna's not very pleased by that. So it's both. It's both. Ultimately, yes, Krishna accepts the intention. But if we're holding something back, which we could, if we're not using something in service, which could be used in service, then Krishna's not so pleased by that. Yeah, Balaprabhu has something.
So in terms of everything being offered, as far as how is everything being offered to Krishna, I was thinking about it more, and you have two things going on. There's devotees who are spreading the glories of Krishna, and in this way they're helping people to become devotees. And you could say, I don't want to sound too weird or something, but gathering living entities to offer to Krishna. Does that sound weird enough? For people who aren't in the fold, but gathering living entities and offering them to Krishna, say like a garland of jivas or a garland of souls, right? So that's going on. So in this way, devotees are consciously offering, right? Because we all know that everything should be offered, but there's certain personalities who are consciously offering, right? Now there's people who are serving Krishna, you could say indirectly, or you have, like, for example, Maya, the material energy, or Durga Devi. She's doing her duty. The devotees are doing their duty in terms of trying to bring people to Krishna. She's also a devotee, but she's doing her duty. And her duty is to, you could say, jab the living entities or cause them suffering, with the idea that they'll eventually inquire into the absolute truth. So, in other words, you could say that that's her offering to Krishna. And ultimately, the whole idea is, or you could say, people are serving Krishna because Maya is Krishna's energy, so they're serving Krishna indirectly by serving the material energy. Or you could say serving Krishna indirectly in terms of serving Maya as, you could say, being Maya's agents. But ultimately, it's almost like, it's like one class of devotees is like are offering jivas or souls to Krishna, and Maya's like almost preparing the offering of the jivas, trying to and then in the meantime these souls are serving indirectly Krishna through the material energy. So it's and both of them are reporting. The devotees are reporting, this is how many souls we're able to inspire and try to help become devotees, and Maya is also reporting, okay, I really. So, anyways,
It's also stated in certain commentaries by the acharyas that this material world, one reason why Krishna creates it is, yes, okay, for prison house for the conditioned souls, but Krishna, he's Prema Purushottama. So he also creates this material world to experience like secondary rasas with the living entities, like for example, like ghastliness and all these different things, which you can't really experience in the spiritual world. I mean, you could, but another reason why Krishna creates the material world is to engage in secondary rasas with the living entities. So this is also another way, you could say, how everybody's serving Krishna, is because he's allowing for, Krishna to experience these rasas. That's something I just remembered.
Yeah, cultivate something to do.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Rantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Krishna Kripa Srimurti Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Kali Yuga Pavana Gaura Hari ki